Okay.
We're starting. Hi guys, I'm so excited. I'm here with my friend Anand, and we're
Yes.
going to talk about movies. And
Movie.
A movie.
Yes.
We're going to talk about a movie that we saw together
Yeah.
called Brazil.
Yes.
And I'm really excited because Anand has done some prep
Yes.
and knows a lot
I
about
have.
films. And I know how to ask questions.
Yes. Yeah. She knows a lot about films too.
I know
she
some
does
stuff.
Know. She
Yeah.
has strong opinions that she subverts and suppresses.
Yeah, I
She
have
has
very strong
Yes.
opinions that maybe will come out in future episodes if we have future episodes. But I think we chatted a bit before this, so I think
a bit.
we chatted a lot before this.
Yes.
But I think what we're going to try to do is explain a little bit about the movie, some key themes, whether you liked it or not, and then whether we think you guys should watch it.
Yeah.
Sound good?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so when did we see this?
I can give you the exact
Yeah,
date.
give me the exact date.
Okay. First question, when did we watch this film? We watched it on the 1st of September.
So it's been a few weeks.
Yes. Yeah. Do you
Okay.
remember much of it? I don't
Yeah,
think you
great
remember
question.
much of it.
I honestly had no preconceived notions. Anand does a really good job of just organizing film outings, so I agreed, but I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what to expect, and B, don't really remember that much, but I had a really strong emotional reaction to it.
Right.
But how about you? What did you know about this before?
So, Terry Gilliam is the director of this film, and I have always have admired Terry Gilliam, but I've always avoided him at all costs because I know makes a lot of fantasy, absurdist, really big films, and I know this is has some bureaucracy in it, which really upsets me. I don't like bureaucracy.
Okay, well, let's back up. So Terry
Yeah.
Gilliam. So did you know him for before?
He's part of the Monty Python. He's the only American member in Monty Python.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Okay.
and he made loads of Monty Python sketches and films and stuff like
okay.
that. And he was, because he's such a creative individual, he helped with a lot of this big animations, big set designs. And he's one
really?
of that.
Okay, nice.
Yeah. And that's why he broke away, because he wanted to make this. And I knew he had a very vibrant, colorful fantasy imagination, which sort of repulses me. I don't want to
Wow, that's so interesting.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, tell me more. What repulses you about that? It's disconnect from reality?
Yeah,
or
no,
how opulent it is?
Because I hate dream sequences or very highfalutin, the role
Yeah.
symbolizes this. But I was very, very pleasantly surprised by this because there's a lot of substance underneath all the
Okay, so
set
you would
design
say
and-
it definitely still it's definitely still a Terry Gilliam film, but it wasn't the negative side of that for you.
It was a pleasant surprise.
Yeah.
I can't say it's a Terry Gilliam film or not because this is the first
first
Terry
one
Gilliam
yours.
I've seen. In
Okay.
fact, she's seen one other than 12 Monkeys. Did
12
you feel
Monkeys is the Brad Pitt one,
Yes.
right? So I have seen another Terry Gilliam movie, and based on what you're describing in terms of the style,
Yes.
I feel I can see where you're coming from.
Yeah.
But maybe let's give a little explainer of
Yeah.
what this movie is about.
On a very
Which
high
is a
level
hard
basis.
thing to do, but
yeah,
yeah.
it's actually very hard to do,
Yeah.
but I think I've nailed this. Okay.
Oh yes.
We are in a dystopian world that is run by this authoritarian bureaucracy. Not much information is given to the audience about where this bureaucracy came from, how it formed, what the time period is. It might be somewhere in the 20th century. Everybody's dressed kind of like that.
But this
And-
film was made in 1985.
1985.
Too, so it's also
and it's
what
color,
they
don't
thought
worry.
at that time.
Yes. So the premise is that we have a very low-level bureaucrat called Sam, and he's played, for the Game of Thrones fan, the High Sparrow, the religious guy. That's Jonathan Pryce. He also played Pope Francis in The Two Popes. He's a very good actor. He plays Sam, a very low-level employee who's very content being a cog in the machine. He's
Yeah.
very content being just low status, no ambition. But he has these constant dreams of this woman who's in distress, and he's flying in these dreams, and he helps to save this damsel in distress. And then until one day he actually sees this woman exists in real life, and lots of stuff happens, but he finally puts an impulse into action to gain this woman, this love of his life. But because he acts upon this, the state finally goes against him.
Yeah,
because he's done
beautiful.
something egregious.
Beautiful.
That is the most high level
Yeah,
thing.
but one thing I really enjoyed about the film was the world building. So I'm going to ask you a little bit more about that. Do you remember he works? Because I feel like the bureaucracy itself is kind of funny. He works in the Department of.
I think it's information transit. So I would say the bureaucracy is important because it is a self-perpetuating machine.
Yes.
And it, what's the word? It's self-preservation. Anything
Yes.
that happens, I guess we should talk about the Tuttle storyline.
Yes. Okay. Before we get to
Yeah.
Tuttle, I totally agree with you, Anand.
Yeah.
So I think on two levels, right? Like at the level of like this whole bureaucracy is just preserving itself and self-sustaining, spot on. But then even at like a very literal level, the departments are like information transfer, information dissemination, information retransfer. Like they're very ridiculous titles where like not only like figuratively, but like literally, like they're just going around in circles.
Yes, but it's done by design.
Of course.
Because I'll get to this through the Tuttle story.
Okay,
so
go
the
for it.
Tuttle story is in this bureaucratic dystopian world, there are terrorists. And these terrorists do random bombings all the time.
Yeah.
And the ministry has decided that Archibald Tuttle is
Oh,
the
right.
terrorist that they would like to kidnap and kill or whatever. But a bug comes into the machine, a literal bug. That's actually where we get the word bug from, is from that. And it goes for Archibald Buttle and not Tuttle.
Yeah.
So the state goes to Buttle's house, kidnaps him, and does this great injustice. And the neighbor of Archibald Buttle is this woman who is the woman in Sam's dreams.
Yeah.
She takes it upon herself to rectify this injustice. She
Yeah.
goes to the ministries and she brings all the documents
Which
and
is
papers.
Kind of insane that she even would care,
Would care
or do
about
that,
this.
but go ahead.
But the idea is that this, as I said, the self-preservation of the system is that there are so many of these words like
Yeah.
information of this, information
Yeah.
of that. Is they're like, oh, you don't have this form, go to this
Yeah.
department. When she goes to this department, they don't have that
Yes.
form, they didn't sign this thing. And it's meant to preserve the injustice from ever holding accountability
Yeah.
to the bad people who did that.
And the
Yeah.
crazy thing about that is I feel like in some depictions of a bureaucracy like this, you kind of try to pretend that no injustice ever happened. But I feel like in the movie, like people are aware that it was a mistake. They just don't want to be caught
Yeah.
with the blame.
I actually
and so
want-
they just like shift it all around.
Absolutely.
So everyone's quite like self-aware of how ridiculous the system is, but they're still like very strong players in it.
Yeah.
And like trying to not
I
get
want to
caught.
read this out to you because this is a very important line that was said in the film. Because one of the guys is put to the test. He said, guys made a mistake. And he says, information transit got the wrong man. I got the right man. The wrong one was delivered to me as the right man. And I expected him on good faith as the right man. Was I wrong? So
Exactly.
there's no
Yeah.
point to
Yeah.
anything. It's
Yeah,
just-
and like of course he knows, but like within that logic, he's right. He didn't make the mistake. I really care a lot about openings to movies, and
Yes,
that was one
yeah.
thing I really liked about Brazil was the opening. The very opening scene is like I'm not sure if you follow the bug from the beginning, but you definitely just see the bug drop
I see. Yeah.
into the
into
make the
type
Buttle
machine.
Tuttle mistake. And to me, that is such a good opening because
Yes.
you don't know why it's going to matter, or it sets a sequence of events
Yes, yeah.
rolling that then like highlights the core message of the film.
Absolutely.
I love
Yes.
openings like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because this is like really absurdist film, and a lot of the things that you watch, you think aren't connected or disjointed. But if you think deeply enough, there are like, things do
Yeah.
match and do
Yeah.
matter and things.
And to me, one of the responsibilities you have as a filmmaker is to have like a beginning, middle, and end that speaks to each other.
Yeah.
Like I love like a really solid ending and a really good beginning, and I want it to all tie together. And I feel like definitely for the opening, also maybe for the ending too, this film did that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I guess the next part that we could talk a little bit about more about Tuttle, the actual terrorist that the state was trying to get.
You think he's actually a terrorist?
He's perceived as a terrorist.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
by the
there's
state.
Buttle, who was mistakenly apprehended, injustice
Yes.
occurred, and then there's actually Tuttle, who they were trying to get in the first place.
Absolutely.
Who like moonlights as an air conditioning repairman.
Yeah, he's played by Robert De Niro, and I think
Which I didn't realize till like it took me a few scenes to realize that was Robert De Niro.
yeah, he's amazing in this
He's
film.
amazing
Yeah, yeah.
in this.
And I think he's such a what's the word? A breath of fresh air. Yes.
Amazing breath of fresh air. Yeah.
And I think the reason why he's such a breath of fresh air, he pierces at the heart of the bureaucracy. Archibald Tuttle is terrorist slash plumber slash aircon fixer.
Oh, but okay, before we go into this story, can I just paint a little bit more of a picture? Like, one of my favorite establishing shots of the film, like to really bring you into the world, is his apartment of the low-level bureaucrat, which has been designed in theory to meet all of your daily needs, but in practice
none
is
of them work.
Extremely inefficient.
Yes, yeah.
Right? So you have this like 80s depiction of the future, which is supposed to be more advanced, but actually just fails in every aspect.
Yes.
So like even something like fixing the aircon or whatever is a very like complex and ridiculously like serpentine endeavor. Okay,
absolutely.
continue.
So let me try and frame this. So Sam, the low-level bureaucrat, his air conditioning is not working. So he sets in a request to the state to come and fix his aircon. So while he's waiting for the guys to come and fix his aircon, Robert De Niro, Archibald Tuttle, he comes in dressed as like a ninja. He's dressed all in black, and he comes into the room. He's like, I heard you got a problem. I'm going to fix it. And he really cuts through all the red tape immediately and simply fixes the air conditioning.
Okay, but it's so great because like figurative red tape, but also literal, like he opens up the vent and there's like springs and like tubes and everything. And he's like, okay, let me like circumvent this.
Absolutely. And this, I think, is very, very damaging and threatening to the bureaucracy because he's not conforming to it. And essentially, like we were talking about a very scary word, existentialism. And I feel like existentialism kind of means that you get to decide for yourself what your framework of your vision of the world is.
Completely
and
agree.
Robert De Niro is doing this. He's cutting through all the red tape, whereas this is very, very threatening to the status quo. So that's why when the two aircon delivery men come in, and they're kind of dressed like Super Mario. From the state,
like the
come
official
in.
route.
Robert De Niro is prepared to kill them. Like genuinely. It's very, very
so
scary
that couches
scene.
it as a real threat.
Absolutely. So the way that it worked was the two aircon state guys, I'm going to call them aircon state guys, come in and they're like, oh, I've heard that you have an aircon problem. Sam does something wonderful. He uses the bureaucracy against the bureaucracy. He does the ultimate sin. He asks them for a 27BC form.
Right.
And they, horror, absolute horror, because they can't fight back. And he realizes he needs to leave and get the form. Without the form, how will we survive? So that's when the state incurs its wrath on him. It's hilarious because every time Sam goes back to his house, the two guys are there and they're just making the house even worse than it was before. I have zero sympathy for Sam. I think he's
an idiot.
No, I don't think he's an idiot because of classism. This is the essential thing where class is extremely important because Sam is very comfortable being a low-level bureaucrat. He's helping perpetuate the system, and his mother comes from an incredibly wealthy position, and she's helping him and trying to encourage him to get promotions free of charge. And because of this, he's very comfortable, and he doesn't really see the the harm the state is doing on the innocent people. It's always worked for him. It's only his first taste of it is when there was a convoluted thing with when they realized that they had made a mistake with Buttle. They had to refund Buttle's wife for paying for her husband's own incarceration, but she didn't have a bank account. So he had to physically go to her house and try and ameliorate it by giving her back her cash. She thought it would be just a routine, here's your cash back, but the state murdered her husband. And that's when he's finally coming to grips with it, but he doesn't really have any sort of self-reflection or essentially, he's still a self-centered character. It's just all about him.
Well, and the entire impetus for his transformation is his obsession with this woman from his dreams.
Absolutely.
Not, like a little bit the injustice, like you do see like these figures haunting him.
Yes.
But it really feels like he's like the reason he's even confronting it is because of the woman from his dreams.
Absolutely. a lot about this film is individualism versus collectivism, and I think it's especially for the rich, because there's a really wonderful scene with beautiful set design
Yeah.
when they were in the restaurant. Do
Yes.
you remember
Oh,
when
I
they were
love
having
that
lunch?
scene. Oh, I love that
And
scene so much.
midway through lunch, there's an actual terrorist attack. There's a
Yeah.
bombing in the restaurant, but they completely ignore it and then they just keep eating because they're rich, they're affluent, the state will take care of it. Why worry? And on top of that, there's a wonderful scene where his mom's girlfriend or friend or whatever, she says, why did you do something about it? And he replies, I'm eating lunch.
But my favorite part about that scene is they just literally carry the screen in,
Yeah.
like this beautiful Chinese screen.
Yeah.
So, like, the rich
Oh,
people-
yes.
you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
To just
Yeah.
like, don't worry
Just, like,
about
just don't
this.
look.
Yeah.
The fact that people are like losing limbs and like on fire, they
Yes.
just continue eating. So another thing I want to talk to you about is just, yeah, because you said it's not a super serious or like dark film necessarily.
Yeah.
But I feel like one thing I also really loved about it was the humor.
Yeah, it
And,
was
like,
very
the
funny. This is
absurdity
a very
of the
funny film. Yeah.
situations.
Yeah.
On the one hand, you do feel like pain, like, oh, this is so frustrating and
Yeah.
inefficient, or like obviously not something we should desire. But on the other hand, I just enjoyed it because I thought it was hilarious.
Absolutely.
Like, these situations were really funny to me.
Because it's so ridiculous, isn't it? And I was thinking about this a lot because I generally get opposed to films about bureaucracy because they depress me because it just feels like a
Yeah.
prison and it's so
Yeah.
stultifying. But I didn't feel that here. I felt it was so comedic because everything was so ridiculous.
That just reminded me
Yeah.
of something else, which is when Sam does get promoted, he moves to a different department. And do you remember there's this whole scene, like his first day at work, where they're trying to capture the attention of the main boss and they're like chasing him around?
Yes,
And it really
yeah,
reminded
yeah.
me of a musical number.
Yeah,
So like to
absolutely.
your point about it not just being like this bleak, like dreary
Yes,
tone
yeah.
to the movie, I feel like they were like about to break into song.
Yes,
like they're
yeah.
literally like.
And what I liked
dancing
about it,
around.
they were pushing around papers. Basically, the scene is this head boss is with like a posse of like 50 other like bureaucrats, and they're just walking around
Yeah.
giving papers to each
Yeah.
other. But none of the papers really mean
Yeah.
anything. In fact, I believe if I was in that job, you don't really need to do anything.
Yeah.
You
It's
just
just
sit in your office and do
the
nothing.
confidence with the confidence with which the boss is like, yes, no, yes, it's like he's pretending like these decisions matter. But like,
yes.
how could they matter when you're like not even?
Absolutely.
It's very illustrative of the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was thinking that, like, I don't think this bureaucracy is malicious. It is just there because it needs to feed itself and
Yeah.
grow. But in reality, this is probably not for this discussion, but I think these kind of authoritarian bureaucratic systems fail eventually. They're not sustainable. But in this film, it's sort of like portrayed as sustainable.
Yeah.
And
Well, it's almost just the backdrop. I feel.
Yeah.
Like we obviously see Sam try to begin to fight against it, but it's not like a crusade, as I was saying earlier. It's more just like his goals were in contradiction to the system. His goal was to find this woman from his dreams, and then he like brushed up against the system.
yeah.
You know, I feel like this movie really depicts the bureaucracy as more as like a part of the world or a part of like the backdrop. It's not really like the enemy.
But but on top of that, I would say that this film isn't necessarily about bureaucracy in the conventional sense. It's about when the state controls human creativity. That's my perception of it. Because how does Sam cope with his day-to-day drudgery? He dreams. He has these beautiful dreams where he's the hero. How does everyone else in that office, when they're looking at their computer screens, what are they doing?
Oh, we
they're
should talk
watching
about this.
they're watching classical
Yeah.
films
That
because
is-
that's their release. Everybody
Yeah.
needs an artistic release.
Yeah.
You can't just
And I
constantly
love
be
it when
living in there.
filmmakers are like, yes, my industry and my passion is what provides this release. Like, I love that it was movies.
Yeah,
It's like westerns, right?
Yeah, they were
Even?
westerns.
Yeah.
Something to distract them from
Yeah,
the.
yeah.
And my favorite thing was what was it? I think it was Ian Holm. He plays Sam's boss.
Yes.
And anytime anything wrong happened, he just panicked.
Yes.
Like, but then Sam comes in and pays the day because he's semi-competent.
Yeah.
And my favorite line was Sam was like, "Oh, she doesn't have a bank account." And Ian Holmes stops. He looks to the back and he's like, "I may as well just hang myself." Like, it's such an extreme reaction to.
But it perfectly encapsulates
Yeah.
the point, which is like how much these meaningless jobs matter to the person doing the job. But I agree with you. I really liked what you said about the classism thing
Yeah.
because I do think the protagonist is less sympathetic because he's only able to go through this life without a hitch because he benefits from it.
Yes.
But then when I was watching it, I kind of took on like, oh, we're supposed to root for him because he was competent and he kept solving those problems for his boss. And so I think I kind of fell into a little bit of like false sense of security.
Yeah.
Like, he is going to be able to like make a stand. He is going to be able to like figure things out.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
he doesn't. Because
Yeah.
I don't think he was actually meant to be or set up to be like a hero character.
But I think his competence is very confined towards that particular job because
Yeah,
I think
not anything
this is maybe to take a step back, looking at this film as a whole. I think the state is very okay if you do daydreaming. If you there's no thought police, you can dream, you
That's
can watch
interesting.
little tiny videos on your screen. That's fine.
Yeah.
But the second you act upon it,
Yeah.
the second you try to take some action and do something like going after the love of your life, the state will punish you to no ends. And I
Yeah.
think that is he's being punished for inaction.
Yeah.
And I think that's the message of the film. If you can take a positive message from the film, is that you will never be able to change the complexity of the world around
Mm-hmm.
you. But what you can do is try and take some agency within your
Yeah.
own life. You know what I mean? Even if it is inconsequential,
Yeah.
you're defining your own life for what you care for, what you stand for, and what you want. I mean, that's my interpretation.
No, I
yeah.
like that interpretation. I
Yeah.
think that's really interesting because that's something that's not depicted in the film at all. Like hobbies or like meal. The only time you see a meal is like when it's meant to show excess and like,
Yes.
the absurdity of
Yeah.
the world. So I don't really know what people are doing outside of their day jobs
Yeah.
or being rich.
Yeah.
I mean, one hobby that is depicted is the rich ladies getting plastic surgery, which
Yes.
I personally just loved and thought was hilarious.
Absolutely.
Kind of ahead of its time.
Yeah. In fact, I thought also it was interesting. Maybe I haven't thought this through because Sam's mom is so wealthy that she keeps getting really intense plastic surgery, and Sam's mom's friend also follows in her suit, and Sam's mom's plastic surgery actually is succeeding and she's looking more youthful every time you see her, but her friend is just looking more hideous every time you see her. And I'm trying to see, I don't know, what do you think that message is? I've been thinking about it a lot. Well, I don't really get the...
I mean, a very superficial read is just like this pursuit of beauty and perfection is pointless because
Yeah.
even though she does become younger, she like degrades or she essentially turns into the face of his love interest, which I
Yes.
think is a very perverted and like messed up.
Yeah, no, that's.
know,
I was
and-
going to say this.
yeah.
Oedipal. Actually, you're glad you caught that because I didn't catch that on the first look at it. But yeah, there's some
It's like
Oedipal
really you
thing
wanna-
going on.
exactly,
Yeah.
it's like so perverted that you want to regress like to the point at which you don't look your age at all, and now you could be the object of desire for your son.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that was like a very uncomfortable.
No,
scene.
I mean, what I was trying to say was in the very end of the film, there's a dream sequence, and she is played by the woman who is his. Yeah, I guess that's what you're saying. Yes,
exactly.
yeah.
But to me, that is, I reacted to that as like, that's messed up. Maybe not everyone would have that same reaction, but I feel like and to be honest, we should talk about like the portrayal of the love interest.
Okay,
of
that-
the romantic story.
that's the weakest
because
part of the film,
That is the
yeah.
weakest part of the film. And coming from like this male director and filmmaker, I feel like his portrayal, like his point he was trying to make about plastic surgery and beauty ideals, I feel like is like, okay, good try. Like he did try to say like
Yes.
it's not something
Yeah.
that's healthy or good for you.
Yes.
But I do feel like it very much felt like it came from a male gaze or like a male point of view.
Yeah.
In the sense, I don't think it was wrong or like off. I just think it was like very simple.
Yes.
It was a very simple portrayal of like, whereas the bureaucracy was so like well thought out and complex and nuanced.
Yes.
I think
yeah.
it was just kind of like,
it
oh,
was
look
like
how
jammed in,
ridiculous.
but it's
Yeah.
actually the most important part of the film because that's his motivation. The motivation
Okay,
is
yeah.
underdeveloped because
Yeah, I think that's
yes,
really why the romance fell flat.
falls flat.
Because this is supposed to be the whole motivation. And it's so like, it's just a very like male gazy, like
Yes.
love, we'll do anything for love. Like,
This is why I think Sam is a bad person, or not a sympathetic person.
Yeah.
And I think I'm okay with this male gazy thing up until the fact that she reciprocates. Do you mean she sleeps with him just
okay,
before
maybe
the?
you should describe
Okay,
the love story
okay.
of it.
So
Yeah.
so essentially, Sam is dreaming of this woman, and she's the damsel in distress. And when he
Yeah.
goes to Buttle's wife to give her the money,
Yeah.
he sees Buttle's neighbor is the woman, and he suddenly is so overcome because he realizes she's the woman from his dreams, and then he tries to pursue her. But then once he starts doing that, that's when the state starts to create barriers for him to try to do that. And let me make this very clear. This woman doesn't know Sam, doesn't know what's happening with Sam. She doesn't like Sam.
Yeah, literally, how would she know that she's been in his dreams?
And Sam eventually does save her or kidnaps her. There's like a big kerfuffle chase scene. This is a complicated film, but
I love I'm fine with elements like that.
Yes.
Like, the chase scene was very much suspend your sense of reality, but I thought it was so entertaining. Anyway,
so he takes her in this car, a truck or her truck. She has this truck, and he's like, just drive, just drive. He's managed to get her out of the building by using his authority and his badge number, and she says no. And he doesn't know what else to do. And then he points to his badge because he's a small person. He only has this little authority, like, here, please respect this. And then she sort of plays along with him, but it's very clear that she's not interested in him. I'm okay with all of this. If it's him constantly trying, he's like a Don Quixote deluded kind of a guy, chivalry.
No, but that's exactly it.
But
he is Don Quixote.
Yes.
He's just like pursuing this damsel from his dreams.
Correct.
So Jill is this, I think calling her damsel in distress is perfect. Like that is the term, spot on. That's how she shows up in his dreams. And his dreams are always about rescuing her.
Yes.
It's not just that she's hot or smart or whatever. It's like he feels validated.
Yeah. So the first thing I wanted to say was Jill acts as she basically has two purposes in the film. The number one purpose is she highlights the maze of bureaucracy, where she keeps going back and forth, and that I don't know if you've seen the film Ikiru. It's a Kurosawa film, and the beginning of that film is very similar to women trying to like help this park, and then they keep going to different districts. So the Ikiru part is one. The second part about Jill is that she only acts as a way to create a sort of impetus or agency on the part of the man. It's sort of like the magical Negro trope where the black person is there purely to help the white person achieve some goal. She's there just to help Sam achieve his goal. She's kind of an unimportant person in his eyes. It's just the idea of her as a concept is really important to her. There's no reason why they even have to have a conversation together. There was no foundation for the relationship, which is why we both agree the most egregious thing the film did was it says that, she reciprocates his advances at some point.
Yeah, the point is he's constantly trying to rescue her or pursue her.
Correct.
And then randomly, she's like, oh yeah, I do like you. Like, let's make out.
Yes, yeah. But also at the same time, we're going towards the end of the film. This is when things get a little bit muddled and we have an unreliable narrator.
Yeah, totally.
So there is a possibility that she didn't.
I feel like I hear what you're saying. I feel like later scenes where they're like happily consummating the relationship or whatever might be fantasy.
Yeah.
But I feel like at that point where she's reciprocating for the first time, we're meant to believe that she would actually have felt that way, which I think totally took me out of the movie and seemed absurd.
I think we need to rewatch that particular part to... I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt. Because if it's a case where he's so delusional that he thinks that she's reciprocating, this film is a perfect film. There's nothing to really talk about.
But I will say, to your point about her only serving as that role for the plot to move it along, one, I think, yes, agree, that's problematic in itself. But two, I don't even think it was done very well. Like, I didn't, or maybe this is by design, but I just feel like it was so glib and so superficial when the rest of the movie was so well thought out, just in terms of like this being a real world. The world building was like very good, complex and nuanced. The sets are so complex and nuanced. It just seems like that wasn't afforded to the relationship at all.
I'm going to give the film the benefit of the doubt and say this is not a reflection of the film or the storytelling. It's a reflection of Sam. Because Sam is glib and small, and he thinks about this woman in these very narrow terms.
You're right.
I think that's right.
I think that's right. I think that's right. Because actually, I think the film does portray her as a complex character.
Yes.
It's his pursuit of her that is like simple and silly.
Yeah, she has agency. She's trying to do things.
Yeah, that's
but
right.
But he's putting her in this angelic
this box.
Yes,
And very comically so, because she's like competent, drives a truck, is in like worker's attire. And in his dreams, she's like in a bikini or whatever, like in a very like her hair is long. Mother-like, I would say.
Oh my God. There's some mom stuff going on here. The other thing I wanted to bring up before I forget one thing I really like about this film is we have to put it in the context in comparing
Oh, right,
other
right.
dystopian kind of films. And like the first one that comes to my mind is Sam is not Katniss Everdeen. Okay, he's not the one person that will come
Definitely
and
not.
fight against the
Yeah.
system and win because
Yeah.
you can make a difference. Spoiler alert: you can't make a difference.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yes,
Yeah.
same with like V for Vendetta or
Yeah.
other dystopian things. We always have a protagonist that's honorable,
Yeah.
that has courage and
Yeah.
morals and principles, and fights against
Yeah.
the thing, and sometimes wins the day through subversive tactics.
But that's the thing, he's not a hero. He's
Love it.
like,
Yes.
yeah,
He's-
he's definitely
he's-
just like the point is that you
Yes.
can't really achieve much as an individual.
Yeah, I don't even. I don't know if I could call him a villain either, but he's definitely extremely flawed.
But he's
not
neither, which I think
sympathetic,
is the
yeah.
point. It's like he's meant to make us reflect. Maybe I do think to some extent it's meant to make us reflect
Yeah.
on like what we think we are able to achieve within a system.
Correct.
And this is just an example that's extremely, it's like the extreme, right? To make a
Yes.
point.
Yeah.
But I do feel like we are meant to also think about in our everyday lives the systems we come up against and what we can actually do.
There's no way to add this in because it's going to feel very jarring, but I think we need to talk about the desk. Because the desk
Oh my God,
is my favorite part about this.
We just talk about it because it's your favorite part of the
Yes,
movie. It
yeah.
didn't hit me the same way it hit you, but
Really, I just
I mean, I
laughed
thought
so
it was
hard.
as funny as any other scene, but
Yeah,
I really
this
like the
is so
screen at
good.
lunch. You love the desk. Tell us about the desk
so,
scene.
the desk scene is when Sam tries to basically at this point in the film, he is in full pursuit of Jill, this damsel woman, and he's
Right.
promoted to this in Ministry of Information, blah blah blah. He's given an office, and his office is half an office, and there's a wall, and there's half a desk. And he's constantly like trying to fight with the guy on the other side by pulling the desk.
Like it's one desk.
It's one
Like,
desk,
you know, yeah.
but there is a wall in between.
Yeah.
But it's just like a sliding desk,
Yeah.
so it made me laugh so much. And there were so many wonderful. Honestly, the world building in this. If you like world building, it's
the world
amazing.
building was amazing.
There were so many things like all of their screens aren't really screens. They're like tiny little screens and then a massive magnifying glass
Yeah.
to look at everything.
Which is so freaking genius
Yeah.
because it's like something that you could think that would be advanced and progressive, but now we know, like, given like that we are in the future, that is like ridiculous.
Absolutely.
And the fact that they also use landlines and like phones.
Yes.
I just love all of the
Yeah.
set design and like that component of the world building.
Yes, there a lot of this some of the technology is really high and some of
Yeah.
it is low.
Yeah.
Like the thing that I really thought was funny was when he takes bottle from his wife, and then he tells his wife, sign here, here's your receipt, and here's my receipt for your
But
receipt. It's
that's
like
such a great scene though, because
Yeah.
the way that they kidnap Buttle seems quite advanced. Like, I mean, it's just a very like impactful scene. 'Cause It's like
Absolutely.
very fast paced. They're like able to like break into the house, kidnap him.
Absolutely.
But after they do all this incredible kidnapping, it's like, here's your receipt for your receipt for your
Yes,
receipt.
yeah.
It's like,
it becomes clinical
hilarious.
all of a sudden.
but we were mentioning how we're starting to get towards the end and we have an unreliable narrator, and we also are starting to question what's fantasy and what's real.
Mm-hmm.
So should we talk about the ending?
Well, I think we can safely say both of us liked the film. Did you
Oh, yeah,
like
for
the
sure.
film?
Yeah.
Would you encourage people to go out?
Oh
and
yeah,
watch
we
this
can
film?
discuss this before we spoil.
Spoil, yeah.
I would definitely recommend this film. I liked it a lot. And the reasons I liked it, which I think is good because it's a bit of a contrast to you, was less so the themes or the philosophical messages and more just like the feast for the eyes.
Absolutely.
I
yeah.
just loved every single set.
Yes.
I loved like the characterization of like the different characters down to like very specific details that really sell it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I just thought it was really funny.
Absolutely. Yeah. Honestly, on that level,
Yeah.
please watch it.
Yeah.
You don't need to dig deeper into
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, yeah.
It's fun. It's a feast for the eyes.
Yeah.
It's got interesting characters,
Yeah.
quirky things. It's not going to make you feel frustrated
Yeah.
or things like that.
Yeah.
Because that was my main fear.
Worry, yeah.
I didn't want to feel like,
Yeah.
you know.
How
yeah.
long was it? Like 2
It
hours
was
and a half, maybe?
two and a half hours
Yeah,
max.
okay.
It is a long
A little
film.
bit long, yeah.
But this is a controversial opinion I have. I'm okay with pausing films and getting back to them. A lot of
yeah.
people are really against this. I like feel there's a lull, pause.
But I
come
will
back to
say
it,
we
yeah.
saw it in the cinema, which I love going to the movies, probably
Yes.
even more than just movies. I love
Yeah.
the act of going to the movies, and I feel like I love that we saw it on a big screen.
Absolutely.
you know, with like the full
Yes.
sound and everything, because it's just such an absurd.
So you would
world.
recommend this film. I have two follow-up questions. Who would you recommend it to? And would you like to watch more Terry Gilliam films?
Okay, I think I would recommend this film to, yeah, pretty much anyone, but especially if you like maybe sci-fi or fantasy, or like in my book club, we always talk about like what we like about different books, obviously, and I have a friend who just always wants good world building.
Yes,
Like
yeah.
if that's you and you want like a really like interesting world,
Yes.
this is like perfect.
Yes, I think that's crucial. Forget everything else.
Yeah,
If you just
like
want to be immersed in
yeah,
a different
immersed,
world.
yeah, yeah.
And every little small thing is taken care
Yeah.
of. And it's just
Yeah.
a feast for the eyes. Everywhere you
Yeah.
look is something new. This
Yeah.
is your movie for
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you like to watch more Terry Gilliam?
Sure. Based on that, I definitely would.
Before we go to spoilers, is this a Christmas film?
I think it's for sure a Christmas film.
What defines a Christmas film?
It just happens during Christmas, and there's depictions of Christmas. So there's always gift giving, which
Right.
maybe later, this is a topic for a different discussion, but I feel like there's something about gift giving. And like,
Yes.
because when he joined, he got a gift.
Yes.
They're always giving gifts to
Yeah.
each other.
Yeah.
But anyway, there was shopping during Christmas time. I feel like there were Christmas trees. There was a lot of discussion of buying Christmas gifts and what gift you were going to give. So for me, for sure, a Christmas film, and also like a really funny film to bring up if that's the topic of your
Yeah.
conversation.
But
because it obviously is not like Home Alone
Yeah.
or something.
I see two things. The first thing is like, I think the thing that we find titillating about this being a Christmas film is I like the idea of films that have nothing to do with Christmas,
Yeah.
but are just somehow set in Christmas and they
Why?
are Christmas
Exactly.
films. They're
Like,
fun.
why
Like
is
my
it
favorite would be like Eyes Wide Shut or of
Well,
course
I
Die
thought you were
Hard.
joking when you said that. I had no idea
I
that
really,
took place
it's
during
in Christmas.
Okay.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
And if we have Christmas, that means we have Christianity. So what is the role of
Oh.
religion in this world? And this is digging probably far too much into it, but it is probably worth thinking about authoritarian bureaucratic regimes and religion. What do we look
I mean,
at
for
it
how
through?
much we talked about how we love the world building, I do feel like there's a limit. Like I didn't see it, like there are no other ideologies, there were no other like hobbies or groups or associations. There's a little bit the concept of like neighborly behavior,
Absolutely.
but like not really like familiar, like a little bit. Like
Yeah.
so, I think we love the world building insofar as it was a depiction of the bureaucracy and kind of like the productive elements of society. But yeah, I would have no idea if religion exists in this film.
So I feel like Christianity in this film functions as a secular enterprise.
Well, I feel like Christmas is not Christmas as we know it, but it's like the bureaucracy's Christmas.
Yes.
And it's like you could call it like a different name.
Because this world is extremely consumerist. It's
Yes.
hyper consumerist.
Yes.
And what's more consumerist than Christmas?
Exactly.
I guess.
I will also ask you,
Yeah.
do you recommend this movie? Did
Certainly,
you like
I
it?
do recommend it, and I was very, very pleasantly surprised. And one thing that's wonderful about this film, which I think is the best part about films, is the more I think about it, the more I like it, and the
Yeah.
more I get out of it.
Yeah.
The first viewing you're going to have, it's going to be a wild ride. You're going to be uncomfortable in some parts. You're going to be interested in some parts, but overall, it's a very enriching experience
Yeah,
for me. I really
totally.
liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. For me is a perfect movie. Like it's enjoyable,
Mm-hmm.
but I also it's also then rich for thinking. Oh, and the other thing I was going to say is,
Mm-hmm.
to me, the mark of a successful movie, like for me personally, is do I think about it later? Because
Yes,
now I'm at this
certainly,
point
yeah.
where we like see a lot of films. You see a ton of films,
Yeah.
and a lot of times I like never think about the film again.
Yes.
This one, like days later, I was still thinking about it, which is pretty rare for me.
Yeah,
So I'm like,
absolutely.
okay, then it really stuck.
I think the film that is passable, that's forgettable, is the most unforgivable. You know, yeah. Even if a film really annoyed me, that's still better than a film that didn't have any impact
That's
on
how
me.
I feel about Cuckoo, even though it wasn't great.
We can
I
talk about
I thought
Cuckoo.
about it.
Yeah.
Next episode is Cuckoo.
That's
Okay.
cool.
Anyway,
Yeah. So,
okay.
spoiler alert, please watch this film. We're going to talk about the ending. The ending has lots of interesting stuff in it.
Yeah, and I feel like normally we don't always need to talk about the ending, but I feel like the ending in this movie is really important. I don't know.
And
like,
there is actually, I don't know if you know the story behind the production of this, but Terry Gilliam went to war with the studio because the studio wanted a happy ending.
Oh.
Yes, and it became such an intense thing where Universal Studios wanted to put out the film at the dream, like when they're sleeping together in the room, and then cut.
Yeah.
And
So at this ending that he's talking about,
Yeah.
basically Sam would have gotten together with Jill, and they're like together and
very
happily
angelic
in bed.
Yes,
Yeah, and there's like angel. Yeah.
and it would have just ended there, but then Sam goes on this wild ride of a dream sequence that, spoiler alert, ends in a negative torture kind
well,
of a
this
situation.
is your spoiler alert, so I think
Yes,
I'll
we've
just
already
say, yeah.
said
So
it, yeah.
basically, instead, rather than it ending there, they come in, capture him, and he starts to get tortured. Then in the torture chair, he gets rescued, and I feel like the rescue part is where it starts to be a dream, starts to be his fantasy.
Oh yes, yeah, probably
Right?
yes, yeah.
Because then
Definitely,
we
yeah.
see him being rescued from the torture chair by Tuttle.
Yes, yeah.
And that whole part was kind of like not really working for me. Like it just seemed really.
But that was all
insane.
dream.
But then,
sequence, right? Yeah.
then I was happy because it turned out to be a dream sequence, and it's actually a sad ending, which I loved.
Yes.
I don't think it should have been a happy ending.
That-
What do you
yeah,
think?
I guess he gets punished. He is punished for his inaction.
Yeah,
That's
I also
my
feel
end.
like I would have felt a bit betrayed as a viewer if it was just like
a
Tuttle
happy
could just
ending.
save him. Like what?
Yeah,
Are you
there was
kidding me? Like that
nothing-
would never happen in this world that you made.
Yes. Just to wrap up the
Yeah.
studio thing, a fun
Oh
fact.
right, yeah.
So the studio was going to release it with the happy ending, and Terry Gilliam got a full print page ad in the New York Times, and he wrote to the producer like, "When are you going to release my film, a full thing?" And that like garnered up support for
Okay.
releasing it as it is. So it wasn't butchered, it wasn't cut. This is
Amazing.
exactly what we see.
Is this like later in his career? Like he already
This
had
was-
a reputation in his career? Do you know?
So
Or-
from what I know, he did the Monty Python films or the Monty Python stuff, and then he made a film called Time Bandits, which I haven't seen, but that got 8 times its return at the
Oh,
box
nice.
office. So based on that clout, he was given the room to do
Nice.
Brazil, but obviously studios,
Oh,
consumers.
also, we don't have to go. Sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah,
but
no,
I was
it's
going to
okay.
say, I mean, we can touch briefly on it. Like, why is it called Brazil? And like the
yeah.
fact that the whole movie
Actually,
is,
you explain why it's called.
well,
Brazil.
I don't really get it except for that it opens with the song Brazil, which maybe we should look into. Maybe there's like some connotation from that
Oh yeah,
song.
I feel like we should have talked about this much earlier.
Earlier.
This has nothing to do with the country Brazil.
Oh my god, I knew we were missing something. At the beginning, I was like, what do we need to make sure to, I knew we were missing something. Yeah, it
it's
has
okay.
nothing
We'll
to
leave
do with
this
Brazil.
in. This is in. This doesn't have anything to do with the country of Brazil.
But there's
yes.
that song, which had you heard that song before?
I
I
did
feel like
not
I
hear
have
that
some
song.
connotation with that very tropical upbeat. And I
Yes.
feel like that song is maybe just like the song they brainwash people to or something. Like like it just fits the mood.
It was really.
It doesn't
I
have
think
an
it's played
actual-
throughout the film in different
Yeah.
parts. I don't know.
Anyway, I just wanted to mention it. It's called Brazil because it opens with that song, Brazil.
Because
or
I was
whatever.
thinking, like, I don't know, I may be wrong on this, but like the model of Brazil is something like the land of the future or something, where this bureaucracy is always the promise of something in the future that
Yeah.
will never come to
Yeah.
fruition. Wrong interpretation.
Yeah, but
I like
we'll go
saying
on a
it.
rabbit hole
Yeah.
later because I did want to look that up. But okay, anyway, back to the ending. So did you like the ending?
This is
Like, because I feel like you
instinctively,
don't like.
intuitively, I didn't
'Cause
like
you
the
don't-
ending the first
Is it
time.
because you don't like dreamscapes, or like you don't like it when it turns out to have all just been
A dream
a
sequence.
dream? Yeah, a dream sequence.
I felt like the ending. Well, my first initial reaction when he's just in the chair, he's tortured, his brain is gone, he's singing Brazil. I felt it was mean spirited, compared to the tone of the entire film, where we just have this thing. But I guess
That's a good point, though. The
yeah.
whole film was kind of like, this is
Whimsical,
ridiculous,
more
but I'm not
whimsical.
judging it.
Yeah.
Then at the end, it was like, you're being judged
This
for
is a
being
downer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I still. But I can't think of any other better ending.
I think it
Yeah.
had to be that ending, or else I would have felt betrayed.
Yes,
Like,
yeah.
he needed to have. Like, there's no way. I really felt the movie set up that there was no way to be successful. If he had then, like, somehow. Oh, do you think Tuttle was all a figment of his imagination, though? Because at the end, he just, like, disappears into
Yeah,
the newspapers.
that made me laugh a lot. There's a wonderful
It's like
sequence
death by-
where
death by
Robert De Niro
papers.
is Tuttle and he's the hero. He's the one oh, you see him, you feel happy. You know,
He
it's,
really did provide a breath of
was
fresh air.
great.
Like it just made it like lighter. Yeah.
absolutely. And your hero, he's in like a Times Square kind of environment,
Yeah.
and it's Christmas, and there's like wind blowing, and you know how like in Times Square there's always like newspaper flying around, and then some of the newspaper gets caught on him, and then it just engulfs him, and he's just fully engulfed in newspapers. And when Sam comes to Tuttle, and then it's just all newspaper. He's disappeared. It's gone
disappeared.
into the. It's a lovely, lovely sequence.
Yeah.
I really
yeah,
liked
that was
that.
a good scene as well.
What did
Yeah.
What did you think about the end?
Yeah, I think it's what I expected. I think that's what I deserved as an audience member. It didn't like. I don't think it like was fantastic or like really brilliant. But if it had been a happy ending, I would have felt betrayed and pissed.
The thing I
know?
struggle with is I'm okay that he gets his comeuppance, but that seems extreme. Like an extreme fate for him. Did he deserve this?
But the whole thing is so extreme. Oh, you mean just his fate? Yeah.
Yes, his fate. Like it's disproportionate to the crimes.
But isn't that
he
your
did.
point about like the bureaucracy? Like that was seen as a threat, and so then the comeuppance is like extreme. Because even the second, all he's really doing is like he's committed no crime except for to go against like the normal channels through which you should proceed.
Yes,
But
yeah.
that is treated as like a capital offense by the
Yeah.
bureaucracy.
Yes,
So I feel like
yeah.
okay, fine. Like even the torturing thing is insane that they torture people for like oh I love that scene where they were trying to sell you insurance while you were being tortured. Do you
Yes.
remember?
Oh, we should talk about. Oh my God, I almost forgot about that. So just
The
before-
comments on capitalism are spot on. Though.
Yes,
Like having to pay for your own
yes,
questioning.
Yeah, yeah.
Like okay, you've been interrogated, you have committed no crime, but you now owe this money to the state because we had to hire people to interrogate you.
Yes, yeah. It's ridiculous. There's a lovely scene where he's initially reprimanded and he's just taken into these rooms where he's lectured. Okay, this is your lawyer. I'm your attorney. I'm going to cost blah blah blah. He goes into the next room, and what's really interesting is that we see how fallible this bureaucracy is, how prone they are to mistakes,
Yeah.
how wishy-washy everything
Yeah.
is. But there's a wonderful scene where one bureaucrat essentially lists all his charges.
Yeah.
But his charges,
Oh, right.
it's a list of every single thing that happened in the
Yeah.
film until now.
Yeah.
Which means that the bureaucracy is very good
Yeah.
at least like recording
Yeah.
everything that did happen
Yeah.
to the T.
I
You
really
know what I mean?
like that.
I liked that scene.
I really
yeah.
like that as an artistic device too, just like reminding you like every little stupid transgression. Like
Yeah.
someone else might think like, oh, that list was too long, but I love that it was long and like they went through every single little thing. Also, when he's being moved from room to room, he's like being hung on a hook like with a hood.
Yeah.
Like it is not like it is pretty dark at
Yes.
that point.
Yeah, suddenly
It's pretty,
it goes
like-
to a very dark turn, and yeah, that's when maybe the state becomes more malicious. I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe I should retract my statement that the state isn't malicious. Maybe it is. I guess it always is. Everything I've been saying about it is bad. It hides injustice. Yes, but the thing is, it's not in my face.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's not like.
pernicious. But yes,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah. Pernicious is the correct
Yeah.
word. Yes.
Okay, let's wrap it up.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to tell our viewers?
Uh,
Thanks for watching.
yes,
You made it this far.
yes, yes,
Let us
thank
know
you.
if you're gonna watch it, if you've seen it, any comments you might have.
yeah. Yeah. That
It makes you
I
want
think.
to see more Terry Gilliam or not?
Let's watch something else. Let's
Okay.
let's switch it up, and we'll get to a Terry Gilliam sometime. We need to do
down
more
there.
things. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Take care.